Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone. In this short video, I'm going to explain briefly about what is meant by EBITDA. This is the question posed by frequently by many finance aspirants. Sir, what is EBITDA? Even though Google is giving volumes of information about EBITDA articles, so many articles, but they want brief clarity on when the EBITDA can be used and what are the limitations of EBITDA. Is it a good measure for evaluating the performance of an entity? Like this, there are many basic questions about the entity. I'm not going to teach you the subject in more detail. The basics I'm going to clarify in this short lecture. What is meant by EBITDA, when it can be used and when it cannot be used. Okay, so basically EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation and amortization. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Now we'll discuss one by one why those three are excluded. Why those three are excluded? Before, what do you mean by before? Excluding this expenditure, excluding these expenses, our performance is good. Before, what does that before word means? If we exclude these expenses, this is what our profit. If we exclude these expenses, this is what our profit. Now the question arises, or why should we exclude this expenditure? If it is my expenditure, my business expenditure, why should I exclude it? Yes, I'll tell you why we should exclude these three items when evaluating the performance of an entity. There are two. I can classify this exclusions into two reasons. One is relative evaluation and standalone or absolute evaluation. So first point, sir, what is meant by relative evaluation? In a relative evaluation refers to comparing two different entities, comparing two entities. So when I'm comparing two entities and I want to analyze how best the management is performing or which management is performing better, it makes sense to exclude these three items: interest, taxes, and depreciation. Okay, depreciation and amortization are one and the same thing. Depreciation is for tangible fixed assets and amortization is for intangible fixed assets. So both are one and the same. I'm taking only three exclusions: interest, taxes, and depreciation. Okay, right. So first point, interest. So if one entity is run purely by debt funds or substantially by debt funds, and another entity is run by equity funds, then the interest expenditure can drag the net profit of an entity which is substantially run by the debt funds. Even though they are doing the same business, even though their sale revenue is same, even though all other expenditure is same, one entity appears to be performing better than the other entity because of the interest expenditure. Say I am using substantial debt, so therefore my profit and loss account has more interest, whereas you are using more of your own funds, your family funds, your ancestral property, or your internal accruals. You are doing the business with your internal accruals. In such a case, you may not have an interest expenses, and I may have an interest expense in my income statement. Even though we are doing the same business on a same scale, your profit and loss statement does not have an interest expenditure, whereas my profit and loss statement has an interest expenditure. Therefore, in order to compare your performance with my performance, it is appropriate to exclude the interest expenditure. So therefore, the interest expenditure is excluded to compare the two entities which are using different capital structure. One entity is having more debt funds, another entity is having more equity funds than debt funds. In order to make an apples to apple comparison, it is appropriate to exclude the interest expenditure. If excluding the interest expenditure, what is the performance of these two entities? Interest expenditure should not disturb the performance of one entity. Should not disturb the performance of one entity. That is the reason we are excluding the interest. Next, taxes. Sir, why should we exclude taxes? You are operating in one tax jurisdiction having tax rate of only 6%. I am operating in another tax jurisdiction having tax rate of 30%. So therefore, the tax expenses may drag my performance. The tax expense may drag my performance. Even though at a business level or operating level, you and me both are same, my tax expense is dragging my profit by net profit. Tax expense is dragging my net profit. That is the reason. In order to make a good comparison, better comparison, it is appropriate to exclude the tax expenses. Next, sir, why should we exclude depreciation expenses? Why should we exclude depreciation expenses? So depreciation is an accounting treatment. So remember, depreciation should not be excluded in a standalone performance evaluation. This is the mistake done by most of the people. Depreciation should be excluded in a relative performance evaluation. So when I'm comparing two entities, I should exclude depreciation because your accounting policy may be different and my accounting policy may be different. You may be following straight line method and I may be following a reducing balance method. So accounting treatment, change in accounting treatment should not disturb my performance. Just because of accounting treatment, I cannot take a blame of not performing well. So therefore remove the accounting treatment and now compare. Though you have different accounting treatment and I have a different accounting treatment. According to my accounting treatment, I have booked more depreciation, because of which my net profit may be less. By seeing my net profit less, you should not say that, or you can't say that I'm not performing well. Remove the depreciation and then compare. Both are doing well. Or I may be doing better than you. That is the reason. So because of differing accounting treatments, we have to exclude the depreciation, right? It doesn't mean, so in a standalone evaluation, we have to exclude it. Because as per the revenue matching concept of accounts, you have to recoup the depreciation expenses, whatever I've incurred. Depreciation is a portion of capital expenditure incurred. So when I'm doing the business, I am supposed to recoup not only my revenue expenditure in the form of sales, I am not only supposed to recoup my revenue expenditure, I'm also supposed to recoup my capital expenditure. After removing revenue and capital expenditure, I should end up with net profit. I cannot say that without capital expenses, I got profit, and because of capital expenses, I got losses. No. End of the day, you have to recoup both your salaries and also your fixed assets cost. You have to recoup both. Our sales should be in a position, should be of that much size that we should recoup both revenue expense and capital expenses. Therefore, when I'm comparing only one entity, after comparing two entities, I have selected one entity which is performing well, whose EBITDA is good. Okay, after removing interest expenses, tax expenditure, and depreciation expenses, I have selected one entity whose EBITDA is more. Yes. So after that, I should deduct the depreciation, because EBITDA is not a good measure of profit. EBITDA says that you need not, without recouping your capital expenses, you got good profits. But I can't say that. Without recouping capital expenditure, I got good profits. No, I am supposed to recoup my capital expenditure. Therefore, it is not appropriate to exclude depreciation while comparing standalone performance. Okay, right. That is one reason. Okay, another reason I'll tell you. So when you are evaluating an entity on a standalone basis, that means I'm doing absolute performance analysis. I'm comparing only one entity. In such a case, why should I exclude interest expenditure? Because in short term, I am incurring interest expenditure. In long term, I may not incur interest expenditure. So over a period of next 2 to 3 years, I am going to repay 100% of my debt. So in long term, I may not be using much debt. So therefore, interest is a short-term expenditure. It's a non-recurring expenditure. It makes sense to exclude. Taxes, currently I'm paying huge taxes. Maybe in the near term, I can reduce my taxes. Then it makes sense to exclude it. Depreciation. I am a capital-intensive industry. I am operating on the initial stages, and I am following reducing balance method. First point, I am a capital-intensive industry. Okay, and I'm following reducing balance method of accounting. Because of reducing balance method of accounting and because of my capital intensive nature of business, I may have a huge depreciation during the initial years, during the initial couple of years, but there is no much cash outflow. I'm not losing something. I'm not losing anything. My asset is there. My brand new machinery is there. It's still in good condition. Or it's only a statutory compulsion that I have to book depreciation. I'm not losing anything. So therefore, I can exclude during the initial stages. But over a period of time, long term, I am supposed to recoup the depreciation also. So therefore, EBITDA can be used for, in the first stage, EBITDA is used for relative performance evaluation. In the second stage, EBITDA is used for standalone performance evaluation. So these are the two areas, these are the two different stages where we will use the EBITDA. And finally, people are using EBITDA as a proxy for cash flow. It is not a proxy for cash flow. It is a proxy for operating cash flow. You should not say EBITDA as a proxy for cash flow. EBITDA is a proxy for operating cash flow. And EBITDA can serve as a best measure of operating cash flow if our income statement does not have non-cash items, does not have much non-cash items. Depreciation is not the only non-cash item in our income statement. Remember, depreciation is not the only non-cash item in our income statement. There may be many other non-cash items also, but in the circumstances where other non-cash items are very meager or very less, then you can take EBITDA as an proxy for operating cash flow. But when my income statement shows much of other non-cash expenses, then EBITDA cannot be treated as a proxy for operating cash flow. That is one reason. And another reason, when financial statements of when income statement and balance sheet of 2 years is available, then you can straight away calculate operating cash flow. Then I don't think so there is any necessity to use the EBITDA as a proxy for operating cash flow. Even a small entity or a large entity, whether the entity is small or large, both entities are supposed to prepare financial statements, balance sheet as per statutory requirements. If they have the balance sheet, then why it makes difficult to compute operating cash flow? If the balance sheets of two financials has been given, definitely I can compute operating cash flow. If the financial statements of 2 years, income statement and balance sheet of 2 years has been given to me, then definitely I can compute operating cash flow. If I'm directly computing operating cash flow, then what is the necessity of using EBITDA as a proxy for operating cash flow? It doesn't make sense. People are using EBITDA as a proxy for operating cash flows, even for large entities, which are anyway disclosing cash flow statement. Even if they are not disclosing cash flow statement, as an analyst, as a financial person, you can compute on your own by taking the income statement and balance sheet. Then it is not necessary to use the EBITDA. Okay, most of the times it is used as a misleading measure of valuation, misleading measure of valuing the entity. Finally, to conclude, so EBITDA can be used. In the EBITDA, I am going to exclude 3 items. One is interest, one is taxes, another one is depreciation. Sir, is it appropriate to exclude these 3 items? Yes, in relative performance analysis, anyway, it is appropriate to exclude these 3 items. Okay, there is no doubt about that. Okay, while you are comparing 2 entities, exclude these 3 items and take an entity which is having more EBITDA. Yes, fine. After first stage of relative performance evaluation is completed, I'll come to the second stage. The second stage is standalone performance evaluation or absolute performance evaluation. In the second stage, sir, is it still appropriate to exclude these 3 items? First, remember, if in the short to medium term, if the entity is able to avoid the exclusions, that means in the short to medium term, I am going to reduce my interest expenditure by reducing debt. I'm going to reduce my tax expenses by using some strategies available in the tax legislation. And I'm going to reduce my depreciation expense also going by asset-light business model. If at all, you are going to reduce in the short to medium term these 3 exclusions, then it makes appropriate. Then I can think that this is a short-term expenses. These are not going to stay with me for a long period of time. If you are not able to avoid this in the long term, then it doesn't make sense to exclude in the short term. If you are going to avoid those, if you are able to avoid these 3 exclusions in the long term, then you can exclude in the short term. Only because of these 3 expenses in the short term, my performance is not good. And these three expenses are not going to stay with me in the long term. Then it makes sense to exclude. But if these expenses are going to continue in the long term, then it is not appropriate to exclude it. Remember, so ask the management whether they are going to change their capital structure in the short to medium term, thereby reducing their debt. If they say, no, sir, our debt is going to stay on the same level, our interest expenditure is going to stay at the same level, then don't exclude it. Next, taxation. Are they have any strategies to reduce their tax expenses by using different organization structure? If the entity has a defined tax strategy, then you can exclude it. No, sir, we don't have any defined tax strategy. Then your EBITDA is of no use. Next, depreciation. Is the entity going to convert from heavy asset model to asset light model in the short to medium term? Then exclude the depreciation. If the answer to any of these questions is no from the management, then definitely we should not exclude that item. Okay, that is first point. No, sir, our entity is going to bear all these 3 expenses in the long term also. But still, whether I can use this EBITDA metric? Yes, I can use this EBITDA metric in spite of I'm going to stay with these 3 items in the long run also. In that case, my management should give confidence that in the long run, my revenue may be much more than these 3 items. Definitely, I'm able to overcome these 3 items and end up with a positive net profit. If that is the case, in the short term, exclude it. No, sir, my revenues are also not going to increase much in the long term. These 3 items are also, I'm not going to reduce this in the long term. Then why you are using EBITDA? Why you are using EBITDA? If your revenues are going to constant in the long term, but you are able to reduce these 3 items in the short term, yes, use the EBITDA. No, sir, I am not able to reduce these 3 items in the short term. I'm going to continue with these three items. Okay. Are you able to increase your revenues in the long term? No, sir. My revenues are also going to stay on the same scale. These three expenses are also going to stay on the same scale. Neither I may be in a position to increase my revenue, nor I may be in a position to reduce these three expenses in the long term. Then EBITDA is of no use. Operating cash flow is a good measure. Thank you.